Good morning. I don't know if people can hear me. Um, so I wanted to jump on live this morning just to talk to Andrea Burkhart yesterday, and we mentioned we were talking about Oklahoma in the sense of the Glossop case, and I wanted to jump on today and get some people who could potentially help on a case that I'm working on or on a report that I'm working on. Um, in Oklahoma. And I don't expect people to jump on here necessarily, but I wanted to be able to get some information recorded. So as you can see, I've just woken up, and that's fine. But anyway, so um, the case I'm going to talk about is from Oklahoma. So it's not Delphi, it's not any of those things, but it's a 20-year cold case. And I become friends. Hey, DB, can you hear me? DB, can you hear me? Um, so I'm spinning this out because I need to get it out before my day gets underway. So that's why I look, anyway. So this case is a 20-year cold case that I've been working on in Oklahoma, and it's it's a really gut-wrenching case, but I think that the community. This is one of those situations where a community is needed, and I've been working with Maggie Zingman, who is the mother of Brittany Phillips, who was murdered. Um, so what I wanted to do was sort of introduce people to this case, and because I do have a lot of I've done a lot of work on it. I've set up. Let me share this with y'all's. And I'm just going to lay out a bit about the case. And there's some podcasts on my YouTube page about this, but I really want eyes on this because there is some major um uh m- there's something weird, real weird going on here. And it has to do with a really bad ME, a really bad police investigation, familial DNA gone haywire. It's so I just want to have more eyes on it. So I wasn't expecting to do this, but I was just like, whatever, I got to get it out after Andrew and I talked about Oklahoma. So let me see. Let me show you what I'm talking about. One moment. Um, I am going to share. Okay. Here we go. So y'all can see that. Let me see. So this is a Substack I created a while ago. And I'm just going to go through um the facts of the case for you. So I went and I put together a case timeline, and um Brittany Phillips was a college student living in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And so she was murdered on what would have been her 19th birthday. Um, she was buried on what would have been her 19th birthday. Uh, Her mother, Maggie, Dr. Maggie Zingman, is a clinical psychologist, and has become a friend. She just turned 70 last month, and she is desperate for answers, and as you would be. Um, but the facts of this case are just bizarre. So, I created a timeline going through the events, um, and I want to give you a little background. So I'm just going to read this off, and then I'm going to go through a few of the key points, And then Maggie and I did a video a while back. We've done several, but I want to give people I do want people, I need some help from all my all my cranky crankaroos. Um, so the timeline of this murder is in 2003. Brittany lives in Florida. She's going to Eckerd College. Her family, her mom, live back in Oklahoma, and so she gets kind of homesick. Whatever, she wants to move back to Oklahoma and go transfer to back to school. So she moves back to Tulsa from Florida after completing her first year of college. So when I'm talking about this, I want you to try to think. I'll tell you how I think, and this is where I think investigative journalism and investigative work kind of coincide. Is that I think about all of the places. So when I think about knowing that Brittany was murdered shortly, the year after she moved back to Oklahoma, I think about where was she, what was her circumstance, who could she have encountered. So I think about all of the things surrounding this. So to me, it starts back at Eckerd College in Florida. So when we think about people who could have possibly been involved in what her murder was it somebody from college? Did somebody, follow her back from, from Florida to Tulsa? So she gets back to Tulsa in May of 2004. And she gets kind of settled, and she gets registered for Tulsa Community College before she transfers into a full-time program at the university. So in June 2024, Brittany is staying with friends, back and forth with her mom. Her mom lives about an hour outside of Tulsa, where she, like I said, she is a forensic and clinical psychologist who was working and still works with veterans, and all these kind of things. But she moves back. She starts working in restaurants. So she works at one time, I don't know, like at an Applebee's. She hates it. Then she starts working at another, I don't know, let's say Cheddar's. I don't know if it was Cheddar's or not. But and she doesn't, you know, she doesn't have what people would consider a um, dangerous lifestyle. But unfortunately, for young women living alone, right? At which she was staying with friends, but she eventually moves into an apartment. Um, the act of being a lone female can sometimes just be, the dangerous lifestyle. So, and listen, a lot of people have worked in food service or bars, just creeps, right? In and out. Anyway, and Brittany, I'll show you a picture of her here in a minute, but I want to walk through the timeline. Cute, young, bubbly, all these things. So she continues in July of 2004. All right. She's working at Cheddar's. Was Cheddar's. Hell. She continues to work at Applebee's, starts taking classes at Tulsa Community College at the main campus. And she's still living downtowns with her friend, the Robles family. She's back and forth with Maggie. Maggie's her mom. She quits her job, unhappy working at restaurant, works a training shift at Cheddar's, and Maggie tells her, her mom's like, don't worry about it, get settled. You don't need to work right now. I want you to focus on school. So here's where stuff starts to happen. So, DB, you probably weren't born in 2004, so I know this is going to be a stretch for you, but just kidding. I don't know. But so she moves into, and this is yeah. So I'm going to share a link to this timeline, but this is where things start to go haywire. So in August of 2004, Brittany moves into Glen Eagles apartment complex. and I have maps and things like that that I can show you, but she moves into this Glen Eagle apartment complex. So, um, and her mom, Maggie's no, it's she does her homework. She's like, what part of town is this? Making sure that it's okay. And it's a fine, it's just a regular apartment complex. It's actually quite close to where Brittany went to high school. So it's like familiar, whatever. So they get her moved in September of 2004. Um, Again, so she starts, her course load goes to full time. So she was basically going to school full time, and she would go and spend weekends with her mom, like I said about an hour ago. Now, so what you need to know is that Brittany moves into her apartment, and by the end of the month, she's dead. Okay. She's dead. Um, in that time, so in that window of time in September of 2004, uh, about 2 weeks prior to Brittany's murder, her friend calls from Texas and tells Brittany she was assaulted. And Brittany was concerned and took off for Texas. So unclear where she went. And the reason I point this out is because when the investigation into her death starts, you know, all of this is important. What route did she take? Who did she encounter? She went to Texas because a friend was assaulted, right? So what's the significance of that? Was there somebody that was this a we don't know much about this trip to Texas, but was there somebody she encountered? So all of these things need to be, to me anyway, when I think about this and reporting this, I need to have all this information in my head. And so it was around the 15th or so of September. So now September 27th, and we're in the final days of Brittany's being alive. And this is the timeline as we knew it up until 2019, when a new piece of information came forward. So on September 27th, on a Monday, Brittany was having sinus trouble, not feeling well, but goes to her class at Tulsa Community College. Now her brother Josh lives in a little older than her, lived in Tulsa. So they bump into each other at the main campus, and whatever. They don't hang out, just say hello. And again, these are just some of my questions. Were any Josh's friends here? Um, who knows? So 6 p.m. that evening, approximately, we know Brittany goes with a friend, and this is all documented. Like the first investigators, the first cops on this were good. And I've spoken, I mean, again, this is a 20-year cold case that shouldn't be told. I've spoken with some of the first investigators. I've spoken with, some of those crusty old detectives, and they're good folks. But again, there were mistakes made along the way, and you're going to see that a lot of the fuckery came in, starting with time of death and some new information, which sounds familiar, right? Okay, so I went through. So 6 o'clock, Brittany goes with a friend to the urgent care clinic located near Boot Barn. And the reason I'm saying all of this is because maybe somebody was in Tulsa around that time, knows that area. And again, I have some, what do you call those things? Maps, that, I'm going to pull up here in a minute. So, and I put the time, like the sunset was approximately 7:15. This is like nerd stuff, right? So we have the sun going down. I looked it up. Around 7:30 p.m., Brittany calls Maggie. So Brittany calls her mom, and she's upset. She's at the urgent care clinic. And she's been there an hour and a half. Now, remember, this kid is 18 years old, doesn't feel well, has been, going to college, feeling like crap, sitting at an urgent care. She has an 8 p.m. class that night. Okay. Now this is again part of the timeline that is uh yeah, I know I'm going early, but I'm going early so I get this all out of my brain and everybody can go back and kind of watch and maybe help me sort some of this stuff out. Anyway, so this again, so Brittany's not feeling well. She's got an 8 o'clock class. She's been hanging out at this urgent care, just getting cheesed off, right? Because it's taking forever. So she calls Maggie. Maggie told her not to worry. She'll get an appointment with the doctor. So she was worried about getting to her calculus class, right? I mean, bless her heart, the girl was worried about making her calculus class. And so she decided to leave the urgent care because after talking to Maggie, Maggie's like, look, when you come home this weekend, we'll get you a doctor's appointment. And the thing is that it breaks my heart because Maggie has become a good friend. Brittany did not live to come home that weekend. So anyway, we got 7:30 p.m. And again, we are on September 2024 or 2004. It's that cold. And September 27th, and it's a Monday. So between 7:30 and 8, Brittany and the friend leave the urgent care. Brittany stops at Bank of America ATM. This is just gleaned again from the things that were found in her car after her murder to show where she went during her day and night. So around 8:30 or 9:30, this is not clear. I tend to think it's around 9:30 because Brittany had an 8 p.m. class. Brittany gets home and speaks to Maggie one last time. Okay. So that's 9:30, around 8:30, 9:30. I'm going to say 9:30 for it because, the class thing. And that's on the 27th. So the 28th is a Tuesday. No contact with Maggie. And this is not weird, right? It's a college kid not worrying about it. It's a story you hear over and over again. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't hear from her. Okay. We don't know. And this is the thing. We do not know if she was still alive at this point. And there's going to be questions there's going to be even more questions about this as we find out new evidence. And there was new evidence, like I said, just a couple of years ago. So again, 20-year cold case, right? So, but this is Tuesday, September 28th. And no contact. Maggie just assumes she's going to school, doesn't really think of it. Maggie's, doing her gig at the Veterans Hospital. September 29th, which is a Wednesday, Brittany misses classes. All right. And so that's when this stuff started to ramp up a bit, right? Maggie starts to get concerned, leaves a message, but thinks Brittany may be resting, going to classes. I mean, so again, she wasn't feeling great. Maybe she was sleeping it through, whatever. Maggie, again, college kid, you don't really care. You never think, holy crap, my kid's not answering the phone. They must be dead. That's not that's not your first thought. And again, Brittany had been planning on coming home during the weekend. So Maggie didn't think too much of it. She's like, okay. So this is Brittany's dad shares a card. Okay. Now we'll get back to this. Her dad finds a new piece of evidence, but we'll get back to that. So then we get to Thursday, and Maggie is now, worried and is getting real concerned, and she's, getting to the point where it's like do a wellness check at the apartment, and Lydia is a friend of hers. So we're on September 30th, right? So from the 27th, when Maggie last spoke to her around 9:30 p.m. to the 30th. And around 9 p.m., there's the wellness check done. And that's when the Tulsa PD finds Brittany's body in her apartment. And she's positioned on the floor alongside her bed. Now, I have the ME's report. I have all the stats on that, and all of the pertinent information on that. At 1 a.m., the police get to notify Maggie, and at some point, I have interviewed her about that moment. Obviously, I can't imagine. So she drives, gets to the apartment in South Tulsa. The police are on the scene at this point and will not let her access Brittany's apartment. And Maggie is told at that point that her body has already been taken to the medical examiner after being identified at the scene with Brittany's driver's license, which I think is weird. I don't know why. I, it, it's just maybe that's the way they do it, but that's what they did. They identified her at that point. So this is the investigation timeline that I had to then go back and cross out because there was new information. So let's see. Let me just look at this. October 1st. Let me see. Yeah, so this is October. So this is where the investigation begins. And let me just see here. I want to go back. That was a bit of the timeline. Here is, let's see. So this is all, and I'll share this the Substack with everybody. But so it's just like to give an idea of the area. I want to continue reading. Okay. But let's talk a little bit about where do we need to go? Facts of the case. Okay. Okay. So here's the facts of the case. As reported. So again, the first set of years, there was a decent investigation going on. Yeah, initially, right. So they did. And so, and I think that that'll become clear. I mean, she was identified obviously later, but they identified her with her driver's license at the scene to contact Maggie. I don't know. It's a weird timeline. I mean, it's a weird. I don't know if it's means anything or not. But yes, they did. Let's see. Okay, so when you think about the facts of the case, Brittany, yeah. Let's see. So this is from February 20th of 2023. Okay, so this is when the new evidence came in. And this is, oh God. So and you can see this. It's like the other day, Maggie and I did a podcast. While all publicity is good publicity, what I will tell you is that it was Nancy Grace. And the only reason I did it was for Maggie. And that was back then. And it was an absolute train wreck. It was the misstatements, and this is the thing where I get really cheesed off at the media. It's like Maggie is so desperate, and rightfully so, to get answers to who killed her daughter 20 years ago, who strangled her daughter to death in her own apartment, that she is going to go on Nancy Grace because she wants answers. And nobody should have to go on Nancy Grace. But I went on with her. And anyway, this is me correcting the record, because, yeah. Let's talk about time of death and some of the things that were starting to become clear at this point. And again, I have the medical examiner's report, and to that things are, I worked with Maggie to get that report, and even as her parent, Maggie had to file a public information request because in Oklahoma it's public information. And so she and I worked together, and then worked with the state medical examiner to get the report. And I've got to tell you, it's a mess. I don't. I've talked to forensic examiners, medical examiners at the University of Oklahoma, and they're like, why isn't there, like, evidence is not detailed. So it doesn't say that there was, they claim that there was sexual assault. However, there is nothing to indicate that there was a sexual assault exam kit done. There's nothing to suggest that there was any evidence taken from Brittany's body. I mean, we do know that there was some taken because there was DNA found that ended up not being the killer, which is like, and how they came to that fact, I have no idea, which is, again, getting out in front of my skis here a little bit. But the medical examiner's report, okay, so this is again on this website that I built. The biggest thing I wanted to note is there is no time of death reported. And this is going to become critical because we get a new piece of evidence that calls into question what day Brittany was killed. What day? And we have a medical examiner who is, I found out later, deeply problematic, to say the least. Bringing chicks into the autopsy suite, right? Driving his motorcycle into the morgue to weigh his motorcycle on the morgue scale. This guy is a piece of trash. And we'll get into it, but it talks to me. Who does that? What kind of gross creep gets away with that? Another thing that happens in this case, and as I get people interested, because I need help on this, is that this guy was fired from his medical examiner's job in Arizona because he was basically a pervert. He was fired for sexual harassment, and yeah, and it was wrong. We'll get to it, DB. It's a mess. So anyway, this medical examiner, it's like when there's bad cops or bad priests or bad whatever it is, they just kind of move them around. And so this guy is a medical examiner, and I've got his whole fact sheet, and we'll get to that in 1 second. Actually, let's take a little looky-loo at that before we come back to this dirtbag. And so there's like a podcast, you can go back and listen to that to get sort of up to speed if you would like. Oh, baby hippo. What else? Here we go. This dirtbag. Hang on. Let's go back a little bit. So to my newspaper clippings. So this is Brittany. Isn't she cute? And it's funny. Well, it's not funny, but the reason I don't know where I heard, must have been a podcast, but I heard Maggie talking, and she was saying, Brittany was buried on what would have been her 19th birthday, and her daughter's birthday, Brittany's birthday, is October 4th. And I'm like, holy crap, that's my daughter's birthday. And so I reached out to Maggie. I'm like, what can I do to help? Because it just struck me. Now, Brittany was older than my daughter, but I just was like, wow, October 4th, and she was buried on that very same day. It's heartbreaking, but anyway, so this is from, I don't know, what is this from? Excuse me. So from 2004, woman still coping after 11 months. Talk about still coping. It's 11 months. Are you nuts? Still coping. She hasn't even woken up from the nightmare, and she still hasn't. But anyway, no arrests. After nearly a year, her daughter's after her death, Maggie Zingman still catches her thinking, I have to remember to ask Brittany about that. At the time when she summoned the strength to clean out her slain 18-year-old daughter's apartment, she sat alone in the space where the unidentified killer stole her last breath. Zingman scanned the rooms for clues to the killing. Then she saw something that appeared to be out of place. I told myself that I would have to ask Brittany if it was that way before. Sometimes I still do. I think about talking. I hate when I do that because I remember she's dead. She's not around to ask. So this is how it was reported in the first year. And whoops. The killer raped and strangled Phillips. And I said to Maggie, I'm like, after seeing the medical examiner's report, there is no indication that she was raped. And that's significant because that was the motive, or that was part of the motive for the strangulation. And if there is no evidence of it, because there was no rape kit, there was no DNA from a rape kit, and there was no evidence physically inside or outside. And I know that's graphic. And I also know that not all assaults result in, quote, damage, but there was no DNA. There was nothing. There's no sign to me that they even did a sexual assault kit. Right? Anyway, so this is, let me see. They did have a look. Okay, so DB, let's have a look at this gentleman. They did, and they determined he was not involved because, and here there is a plausible reason. Brittany would let her friend and her friend's boyfriend stay at their apartment, and they would get down in Brittany's apartment. So there was a logical reason for this person's DNA to be there. Oh, having a look at this. Medical examiner. Oh, okay. Yep. Sorry. Let's get back to that guy, because that guy, whoo, Lord, he's no longer, it should be noted, the medical examiner. Okay. There he is. Dr. Andrew Sibley. So, it should be noted that Tulsa at this time was going through, I mean, it wasn't even a scandal. It was just, scandal's not the right word. the state medical examiner or the state laboratory lost its certification at one point. And that was part of a longer series of issues with being understaffed, not keeping up to date on various code, etc. But this is our jerk right here, Dr. Andrew Sibley. Now, he's gross as hell. And he is the one that I believe did the world's worst examination of Brittany. And I also have started to believe, because now remember, Brittany was murdered in 2004. He is the one that showed up to the scene. He is the one, there's an indication that there was an internal temperature taken, but it wasn't noted on. We have no idea what her body temperature was. So we do not have an accurate time of death at all. And there's I've never seen an autopsy like this. You know, you typically see an autopsy form, and everybody's seen this, right? And it is pretty standard that there's a body with, like, here's the abrasions, here's where this happened, here's, you know, where a cut or a bruise or whatever. There was none of that. There was nothing detailing, you know, fingernails clipped. You know, there's none of that. There's none of that indicated. Now, we know now that there was DNA found from several different sources. Most recently, they sent off the DNA from under her fingernails. I'm like, 20 years later? What? Anyway, so this Andrew Sibley, so he goes on his little reign of terror. In August, he's, just working as an ME, and then he fails up to become, let's see here, medical examiner, loses, underfunding, proposing to close Tulsa office. Okay, so this guy, 2009, there's some major turnover, obviously. We've got Dr. Chief Jordan, then we've got Dr. Gofton resigning, then we've got pathologist from Louisiana on the 2009. And then in 2009, this is where they lose accreditation. And I've done some research into that as well. They ended up entering a consent decree with the federal government in order to be supervised to get their accreditation back. Backlog of reports not complete grows to around 1,500. Okay. Trant, so this is in February 2010. So 6 years after Brittany's death, Trant is suspended and then fired by the board that oversees the office after less than 9 months on the job. Accuses him of sexual harassment. This is a common theme, because this guy, Andrew Sibley, 10-year office employee, hired as interim chief. Okay. Then this guy comes in. Let's see. Where is it? Sibley and 2 supervisors are fired in 2012 for employee misconduct. And no idea. There was no idea that this guy was the one who, there he is. Here he is, this guy. Disgusting. Violations of the, yeah. So more sexual harassment. So that is, so Dr. Sibley, and I don't even know if he's a doctor anymore, but this is, so this isn't even like the totality of the problems with this case, but it shows how, and this is something that Andrea and I talked about yesterday, is that, you know, um, how this is a part of the legal system. These medical examiners are not held to account. They are part of the criminal legal system. And there's rampant sexual harassment going on in this space. And oh, by the way, this guy gets fired in Arizona and moves on over to Oklahoma, does an incomplete, if not completely inept, um, medical examination of this young woman who we have no idea what the time. There were 3 days, 27th, 28th, 29th. She wasn't seen. She had a conversation with Maggie, right? But so somewhere in there, and so this is the problem. So in addition to this guy just being absolutely disgusting, let me just remove this for a minute and then bring this up. Come here, cat. Where you at, boo? Stop. Let me just see this. Mm, mm, mm. Here we go. So this is from the Oklahoman, and this is back in 2012. Longtime doctor at the Oklahoma Medical Examiner's Office, and 2 supervisors have been fired. Dr. Andrew Sibley, investigator, Supervisor Brenda Kelly, and Administrative Supervisor Ashley Hancock were fired as of July 12th. They had been on administrative leave when they were forced to leave work. Okay. Kelly was fired. So Brenda was fired for that. Let's see. I'm trying to find. Acts of sexual harassment include, but are not limited to, sexual kidding or other contact in an intimate or sexual way, sexual jokes or stories. This is something that Sibley is, you know, when you go through his record in Arizona, it's the same thing. And again, this is not the totality of the problems with this case, but it is an indication of how jacked up this stuff is. It's not isolated. So that's the other thing. When Andrea and I were talking, when you watch LawTube, they're bringing attention to the fact that too often people believe the integrity of an investigation or law enforcement, right? I'm telling you, this kind of crap happens all the time. All the time. Sibley said last week by phone from Canada that he had not seen his termination letter yet. He complained he does not know what accusations were made of him. He was never given a chance to respond before being fired. This is terrible. This is terrible, Sibley said. Okay. I've always thought that one should be given the opportunity to not only defend oneself against allegations, but also to at least know the allegations are. I haven't been asked any questions. I have no idea what the issues are. Really? Really? Because, let's see if they get into it in this article. They don't. But I find that hard to believe, Andrew Sibley, because this happened at your previous job in Arizona. Let me see if I can find that. Because, again, the time of death becomes critical, because in 2023, they put, or in 2004, when she was murdered, they put her time of death at the last known contact. Does this sound familiar? At the last known contact, and that was a phone call to her mom. But what we found out later is that Brittany sent a letter the day after she supposedly was murdered, the day of her death. And what the hell does that mean? And that was brand new information. So let me see here if I can pull this up. Maybe the best way to do this is to show you an interview. Because they do, actually, the one thing Maggie has going for her is the local media has been dogged on this and been really kind of amazing. So let me see if I can pull up that Maggie Thingman new, what's the word? New. Okay. Is this the one? Okay. I'm going to bring this up. Is this from, yeah, Lori Fulbright. So Lori Fulbright is, I'm going to bring this up here. She has been out there doing the Lord's work on this case and been giving Maggie a platform that, you know, what is this? Okay. Is this right? Nope. Let me see. That is not it. Stop. Here we go. Sorry. Okay, here we go. All right. So this is from, and so this is in 2023, and Maggie called me when she got this new information. So I'm just going to play this.
Hey folks, it's Randy Pierce right here.
Hey, Randy.
Tulsa. Are you looking?
Oh my God, Randy. Sorry, y'all.
Looking for your next car, truck, or SUV?
I didn't have it teed up, so I'm sorry. Let's see. There's Randy. I don't know. Okay.
It's a murder that's gone unsolved for 18 years, or
Hang on.
to say the least.
It was almost like
That's
being
Maggie.
told she had died again because it was a piece of her.
She's not showing the exact stamp since it and the card are evidence and she gave them to police, but she says stamps like this one are bought at a kiosk or a post office desk.
There's really two viable options, and one just, it's tearing my heart apart, is that she mailed it.
Which means she was alive.
Which means she was
later than we thought. That changes a lot about suspects, about everything.
Alibis, everything.
She says the second option, and likely the more logical one, is Brittany asked a friend to mail the card for her. But Maggie has asked Brittany's brother and a handful of her friends, and they didn't mail it. So now she's asking anyone who did mail it to please come forward.
But we need to know because this changes the whole timeline on her death. This can affect so many things.
Brittany was in college in 2004 when she was raped and strangled in her South Tulsa apartment. Originally, investigators believed DNA from the scene would solve the case, and it was compared to more than 1,500 suspects, but they were all ruled out because they weren't a match. Then a few years ago, Maggie got the devastating news that DNA was not the killer's after all, but belonged to a young man who had spent the night with his girlfriend at Brittany's apartment. That means some of those suspects who were ruled out could still be the killer. So now Maggie wants to know if this new piece of evidence might be significant. And to know that, she needs to know if someone besides Brittany mailed the card.
Is it going to bring her back? No. But, we need to find out if somebody mailed it. This is just so important because if not, that stamp, yeah, I mean, I don't know how to impress this, but that stamp can't lie.
Anyone with information about this case can contact the Tulsa Police Homicide Unit. As for their take on this card, detectives say they cannot comment on an open investigation.
Chris.
Not to, okay. So let me recap. So the stamp, so Brittany's dad lives in Florida. He was going through a box of things and came across this unopened letter that Brittany sent to her grandfather to wish him a happy birthday. And the reason that this is significant, it's not a lick and stick stamp. Hang on one second. So it's not a lick and stick stamp. It is a, sorry, y'alls. Trying to find, here we go. I don't know what this is. Let's see what this is. One moment, please. Oh, okay. So this is when Maggie, let me see if this explains stuff. This is when I was doing just a quick interview with Maggie. She goes to crime cons and it's like, again, she knows how much rigmarole goes on at crime cons. She knows how commercialized all of these things are. It's kind of like when we went on Nancy Grace, we had to like hold our noses, but it reaches an audience, right? So every year, Maggie gets a car wrap and wraps her car with a picture of Brittany, the information about her murder, and drives across country. And because she is a trauma psychologist, a clinical psychologist, she works with other homicide families and makes her way to a crime con or to whatever. And it's these caravans that she does to raise awareness about Brittany. This woman is a force of nature. But let me bring this up about the stamp. And this, I can't remember what crime con this was. Must have been 2023. Up. Oh, it's Inception. Hang on a second. I don't think I can do that. One moment. Come here, cat. So this is on. Can I do this? Why does it look like this? Remove. Damn it. How else can I do this? Okay. All right. Let me just see if there is a. I'm just trying to get the actual video. Can you hear that? You know, new evidence, new timeline, all of those things I talked about in our audio version of this. So this was in 2024, when she was at CrimeCon. But one of the things I wanted to bring up, because, you know, there is hopefully going to be a cold case
Can you
group
hear
looking at this. At least we're hopeful for that. I wanted to bring up some stuff about the autopsy. First of all, this what I have here on the screen. Can you guys hear that or no? Can you hear the video going on here? Because I can't. Hello. So you hear the video? So when I click on this, screen is just a clip from
Okay.
back in February when Maggie got the new piece of evidence that altered the timeline and the timeline of Brittany's murder. And I can tell you from my experience at this point with the new and its new evidence, there's been no movement by the Tulsa Police Department on this. They say that they have sent away the envelope for testing, which is like great, but they haven't called anybody associated with the finding of the new, the finding of the envelope. They haven't called Brittany's father, who is the one that found it, 18 years later and sent it in. So they haven't spoken with him, Maggie's ex. They haven't spoken with two friends. I think it's two friends that called the police department saying, after seeing the news story about the envelope, I could have sworn I saw Brittany in class, that Tuesday or whatever it was, that suggested that, or actually not suggested, that added a little bit more weight to the need to shift the timeline. So they haven't called anybody who has called in tips since then. And these are Brittany's friends. These are friends who had either went to college with her or just were friends with her. And so there's been no follow-up whatsoever. So you have 19 years. One DNA profile that led to nothing, with no explanation, really, not a good enough explanation. And again, go back and listen to the first 3 audio explanations on this. No good explanation for why the first DNA sample was rejected or was supposedly not. Let's see. Is Maggie coming? Hang on one second. Hello? So again, I just want to say this is from 2024 when Maggie was at CrimeCon. Okay. So I'm going to let this run for a minute, just because I'm going to let it run a minute and then I've got to go talk to my cat for a second. So BRB. But let me start this up again. I think this is helpful to whatever. Hello? Hi. Hello. I just wanted to say hello. Can you hear me, Maggie? Oh, and there she left. Anyway, so maybe she'll call back. She is literally at CrimeCon. So what the hell was I saying? The first DNA was ruled out. The person who matched it supposedly had a reason to actually be there. But now this last February, hello?
Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
What were you talking about your hair the other day?
Oh my God.
What's
well,
different?
No, well,
Huh?
it was like, it was first thing in the morning and my hair was like, like this. So you went back in. I was just doing, this is just recording. It's not live. So
I was just kind of walking through everything since February, with the new evidence and the fact that the police haven't called your ex or anything like that.
Right.
And I just thought I would, and I did try to call TPD. I talked to 2 different people. Just saying that, that I'm working on a story about the 19th anniversary, etc. So we'll see if they get back to me. And I do, like I said, New York is a one-party state, so I support
I
them.
still would email both the chief and deputy chief, because they are the ones that specifically said, oh, we want to solve this case, so we really want you to do the story on her anniversary.
Yeah. Well, and so you weren't able to do, so Channel 2 in Tulsa wants to do an update story or something with you. But you weren't able to connect with them today? Is that
Yeah,
right?
I mean, we tried, but Paul Jensen was presenting earlier, and I went in and saw that a little bit. Chris Hansen's here presenting. It's such a popularity thing. Everybody's wanting to take pictures,
I know. It kind
and
of,
stuff.
it makes me feel a little weird. Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, it is. I mean, but, like I said, the exposure and Nancy Grace is here. She probably doesn't even remember me at all.
Well, she was real sweet on the phone that one time.
Yeah, well, but all her people, her executive producer knows me, and her executive producer said hi, and Lee Egan, knows me. I mean, they were all upset about the parking too. And stuff. So I wish I could turn the camera around. You could see how wild and crazy this is, but I don't know how to do that on this thing.
Oh, it's
so,
okay. No,
but what is this called? StreamYard. So I'm wondering why StreamYard is working very good, but Zoom isn't.
Oh, I don't know. It might be
Tech wizardry.
I'm not exactly sure. I have no idea. But StreamYard,
this is the blind leading the blind.
It's been working
folks.
well for me. Well, are they trying to interview you over Zoom?
I was trying to see if I could.
Well, I mean, you could just turn the camera around if you want to show me.
Turn the film around, but I can't.
Oh.
I mean, it's a low crowd now, but.
Well, so what were the podcasts that you spoke to that were interested? The first one you mentioned was a man and a woman team. Was it a cold case podcast? All right. So maybe that's not going to work. Okay.
Took me in. They were so sweet.
Ah.
And then True Crime Garage, and then trying to see what the other one is. The Date with Dateline. Now, there's also a group that's from Utah that does cold cases. Are you aware of that?
Is it Hidden True Crime?
Yeah, it's, hold on. I'm going to go to the booth. I'm just walking by Othram, but I think they're too famous to be here. But
okay, so a couple things. So Othram, I think everybody knows Othram is the DNA lab. They are doing the most recent run on some DNA that was found in Brittany's case. I'm not gonna play the rest of this because I honestly don't know if Maggie and I get to talk about anything, but I wanted to play it because you see how Maggie knows the game, right? She knows that she has to go to these things because she wants exposure for this cold case. And the thing is that you know, there's no reason this case isn't solved. And, you know, there's so much background here. And I wanted to introduce everybody to this case. And I wanted to do it before I kind of lost my gumption. Because again, it's never far from my mind, but because Andrea and I were talking about Oklahoma for a different reason, but Oklahoma, you know, I was like, I need to start getting this into the crank zeitgeist, if you will. And so what I'm going to do is, let me take this down. What I'm going to do is I will share all of the information I have so far, and most of it is contained within a website I put together a while back. There's some of it is here on YouTube. Some of it is on a separate Substack I created, but I'm going to drop all that in the description. And I really would love it if you all would help share that. And Maggie wants to do a live at some point and go through the case. And Maggie's an amazing person. I mean, I just absolutely love her to death. And I think that there's so much rampant fuckery in this case. The Tulsa PD, I believe, has messed up so many cases, and DB had pointed out the one case that Dr. Sibley was mentioned in, and I think the implication is if they can't believe that medical examiner, it's going to call into question all the other convictions. And you know what? That's part of the problem, right? It's like, well, stop hiring disgusting, trashy people. Start being accountable. And the cops are now treating Maggie, and this is just me, they're treating her like an enemy. And I'm just like so sick of it. It's like, come on, just share some information. And yeah, so I wanted to just again get that out there before I kind of lost my gumption. And I know DB is already clickety clacking away, but I'll share the information I have, and then we'll kind of go from there, because I really want to bring this into the main, and it's really important to me, and I think that it's really illustrative and informative in the context of what we talk about in Delphi, or what we talk about in Karen Reed, or whatever any of these cases are. It's that they don't happen in isolation, and they're, you know, there are bad actors and there are bad investigations, and this happens across the board. And, you know, resolution coming at the cost of the security of a conviction is not resolution. And so, you know, but I think that everybody would love Maggie. I think Maggie brings an incredibly valuable perspective. Like I said, she is a brilliant, you know, trauma clinical psychologist who has, you know, worked in a forensic setting. She's worked in prison environments. She brings a lot of very interesting perspective to her own daughter's murder case. And it's awful, but at the same time, she wants to help others. You know, she really wants to help others. So I'm just going to end it there. We'll provide more information. And I think probably the easiest thing, if people want to get up to speed, is I'll share the links to this, I think it's a 3-part podcast that and it's not even a podcast, it's just me reading kind of the timeline and the information. And that way everybody can get up to speed. And yeah, so absolutely 100%. Yes, we will. We'll get it hooked up. She is game. and we'll see when we can do that. But she, like I said, is just a force. She has no time for bullshit, and she's had it up to here. But yeah, so I'll share all that. Everybody we can get everybody up to speed. And then I'll start trying to sort out with Maggie when we can do a live. And everybody share it, please. And the Substack too. Again, all that'll be in the description. But okay, so thank you, everybody. Like I said, this is really early. I'm depending on the rewatch crew. But thank you, everybody, for being here. And yeah, we'll talk soon. And remember,